to introduce Bill Richardson from Heritage Relief. He's going to share with us the work that's going on in India and the helping this before. Bill, good to have you with us tonight.
Hey, thank you so much. It's good to be with you this evening and take you on a little journey through. Most of this will be in Nepal. Right now, India is under martial law where we work. So we're still able to help fund projects, but a lot of the things we're doing, we had to shift a little bit to Nepal. I don't know if you ever were in a riot. Anybody ever been in a riot? Come over with me in North India. They have riots every day. So the government shut down that whole region of northern Kashmir and part of Jammu. I don't know if you followed last year. Earlier this year, they had a war between India and Pakistan. Did anybody follow that? Yeah. You know, they shot down some fighters and shot some missiles. That's right in where we work. And we work in an area with about 9 million Muslims. And out of that, there's 250 Christians. So that's why we don't put a lot of stuff up online about what goes on in India, because we endanger people. For examples, they did a water baptism at the church we work with, and somebody had the great idea of sticking up on Facebook. And that was a big mistake. Because of that, they drugged the pastor and his assistant out and stoned him in the street. You know, they didn't die, but they were injured pretty bad. So so we don't talk a lot about what we do in India too much. You know, Nepal's open. That's one of the reasons we focus on that a lot. And so, one thing I did want to say thank you to you guys. This is a plaque that's going to be put on you guys bought a water system this year. I don't know if you guys know that, but they're starting to build that next week. And I'll pass these around. If you guys want to take one, you could keep that water project in your prayers. That gives you the name of the village and all that good stuff like that. So I made 15, so there might be enough for families to share. Yeah, so that's what this picture has here. I don't know if you notice this guy getting water, but on the top of the water tap, there'll be a plaque. A reason we put those up because it basically says, you know, the people who paid for it are also praying for that village, praying for the people in that town. So we want people in that village not so much to say, hey, look what somebody did, but we want to remind them constantly that people are praying for them every day. And as they come to get water, there's people praying from the States. So let me take you on a little journey through the country of Nepal and some of the work that we do. That we have working there. Slides not move. There we go. Somehow we got a little bit of a lag. I'm sorry, guys. Michelle. There we go. We're back to the beginning. Okay. Let me have a sit here and I can see what's coming up. So cutting edge relief. How did we launch it in 1997? We launched cutting edge relief to work in the country of Nepal, North India, and as well as a lot of disasters that were happening in the US at the time. You know, and through that, the Lord has allowed us to really impact a particular people group in Nepal, as well as the Kashmir region of North India. The people group we work with in Nepal, they're called the Chipang people. Chipang people, until about 30 years ago, they lived in the jungle. They lived in jungle, they lived in caves, and their primary diet was mountain roots that they dug up. They would put nets up in the forest at night and catch bats. So they ate bats and roots. And since they lived in caves, when the earthquake happened in 2015, all the caves collapsed, which drove them out of the jungle. And the government gave them really great marginal land. I don't know if the government ever gives you anything marginal, but that means it's not very good. So all the land is really on extreme hillsides. So all they could grow on those hillsides is corn. I don't know if anybody's ever had a diet of all corn mush, popcorn, corn. That's their primary diet. They supplement that with some mountain roots and fish, and they still catch bats and birds. That's this kind of interesting thing about this area. You go there and you don't hear any birds because the people eat them all. If it moves, they eat it, other than snakes and stuff like that. They eat mostly birds and mammals type of things. So, but yes, I have eaten bat up with the people. So, yeah, people always ask, what does bat taste like? Well, if you put enough garlic on anything, it tastes like garlic chicken. Okay. So that's what we do. We bring transformation. And this is actually a little video. Oh, it's actually,
Hmm.
that you're seeing a picture of there. I don't know if you noticed down at the bottom of her feet, she has potato chip bags on her feet. One of our first clinics we did among the Chipang people was back in 2019. And this little girl was at that clinic. And I saw her walking down in front of the church that we were doing the clinic at. And she had the biggest smile on her face. And I had to ask the pastor, why is the girl so happy? He asked the little girl and she said back, I have my very first pair of shoes. She found 2 potato chip bags and put them both on her feet. So that's little bags of chips on her feet. And because of that, it's like, I saw that and said, man, this isn't fair. God, what are you going to do about it? I said to myself, and I heard the Lord say back to what are we going to do about it? Anytime God says you're done. That means it isn't like you could just walk away and say that's nice. So that allowed us to really get a launch into the country of Nepal in a really strong way. Back in 2019, as you know, was right before the pandemic. So we were able to get some things started pre-pandemic. We had as 2020 came on in March, we had a medical team in the country as the world shut down. We landed back in Kathmandu out of the mountains, and people were starting to put the masks on. They were starting to restrict flights into China. We just made it back home before the world closed. So, but that's okay, because during that time we were able to send monies over to build water systems and do a lot of just groundwork to get doing what we need to get done. So, country of Nepal is kind of unique in the fact that they serve a lot of false gods, as well as a lot of people know that Nepal has Tibetan Buddhists in it, but they're primarily a country of Hindus. About 85% of the people in the country are Hindu, and that's a 147-foot tall Hindu god, that big statue there they have. So, and one thing about Hindu gods, they don't really care about you. They kind of care about their own things. People pray to them all the time and they don't do anything, so, but, that's one of the things that makes Nepal unique too, where it sits. It sits right on the border between India and China. Does anybody know if India and China are friends? Does anybody know? No, they hate each other. They constantly fight. Parts of where we are in Jammu and Kashmir, up in the top of that area, they shoot each other every day. About 5 years ago, they had a big battle between India and China about a border area. They made an accord years ago that they weren't able to shoot at each other with guns. So what did these guys all do? They got baseball bats, wrapped the ends with barbed wire, and they had a melee and they just beat each other. And India had 10 people killed. China had about the same amount. They just about 300 or 400 people just pounded on each other for an afternoon. So That's this world. And a little bit about Nepal. It's a country of about 29 million people to 30 million, depending on who's counting that day. Out of that, we have there's 240 mountains over 20,000 feet. Okay. So, I mean, the highest I've ever been in Nepal is 17,700. We crossed a mountain pass, but Nepal is a place where things are changing. Right now there is about 1 million Christians in Nepal. 10 years ago, in one of the Christianity Today magazines, they looked at the fastest growing Christian nations in the world, and Nepal was number one at the time. Right now, there's 30 million people, about 1.3 million Christians. So about 1 out of every 30 Nepalis is a Christian, which is really good because in a country where there is over 10,000 Hindu temples, thousands of Buddhist shrines, God's doing some great things. I know you read on there, it says humans are sometimes offered on key dates. Yes, they still do human sacrifices that nobody ever talks about. How does that work? Usually there's a holy man goes out into a marketplace, finds the girl they want to sacrifice. They rub some powder on her hand. She goes in a trance that night, walks to a lake usually and jumps in and drowns herself. So, I mean, you talk about demonic stuff. This is a place where a lot of that stuff happens. But, it's right now it's open to share the gospel through churches and things. To convert to Christianity can be done. Open evangelism cannot be done. They changed some laws right after the earthquake where they restricted open evangelism. So everything has to be done within a context of a church building, inside the building. So that allows us to do most of our training, teaching, medical clinics all have to be within a church building. Again, back in 1984, that's the first time I went to Nepal. That's a long time ago, huh, Jack? So 1984, there was about 25,000 believers in the whole country. Out of that, there was about 250 pastors. There was a great persecution that happened in the 80s and 90s. Every pastor went to jail. I was there until 1988. And in 88, basically, every pastor went to jail. The man I worked with directly in Nepal, he was in jail for 16 months. Got kicked out of Nepal. So, it's kind of funny. The guy I was working with, he said, well, why don't you come back after the persecution's over? So, it took a couple things to get back, but, God's doing some really good things in that country. Right now, the government's really targeting Christian Bibles, and baptism is also targeted. You can go to, as a pastor, if you water baptize somebody, you can go to jail for water baptizing somebody. Most of them don't have baptismals in the churches. They take them down to the local waterfall and dip them. So that it gets a little tricky, but the government, you have to get caught. Okay. I don't know if anybody's ever worked in closed countries or been in closed countries. You do a lot of things until you're caught. Okay. You pray. And so we've been really focusing on, again, the Chipang people group. And one of the reasons we picked them is because they were the poorest people of Nepal. Nepal is always within the top 10 poorest nations of the world. And these are the poorest of the poor of that country. And most of these people, you would walk into their homes. All they would have is a empty floor with a fireplace. They have one mat on the floor that they'd have a blanket on top. So a whole family sleeps under one blanket. Okay, you guys want to have all your kids and things in bed with you at night. So they do that to keep warm, especially in the wintertime. So a lot of winter times, what we have to do, we get a request if it's a really cold period of time. They ask us for blankets. So we'll go buy a couple hundred blankets, ship them up to the mountains and get them to the folks in the villages. Church planning, that's one of our primary concerns with working with the Chipang. Right now, since basically 2020, we've been able to plant about 20 new churches among these different people and raise up the pastors. We do a pastor sponsorship program. So we sponsor pastors who are church planners. What does that mean? We send them $60 a month basically for their living expenses. It doesn't sound like a lot, you probably pay more for dinner sometimes than you would support a pastor. We only support pastors who are church planners. So we challenge a lot of churches. Hey, you guys want to sponsor a sister church? That's one of the things we do there. And so that's, God's doing some great things. I always love this picture because it reminds me of why we do what we do. You can see the guy in kind of that dirty looking suit. He's a former witch doctor. We were putting a water system through his village. And as we were burying the pipe past his house, he came out and asked the team, hey, who's paying for this? Is this government? Is it an NGO? How's this getting done? And it just happened to be one of the pastors from the churches was helping to do the work. And he said, we're Christians. We love Jesus and we love our village and we want to be a blessing. And as any pastor's favorite question is, well, who's this Jesus? So they were able to tell him who Jesus was. He became a Christian. He gave up his witchcraft. Because he gave up his witchcraft, it created a problem. So if you put spells on people and you get paid to do it, you don't do it anymore, no income. So we helped him with a goat farm. Well, that's one of the things we do also. We've helped about 400 families with setting up small goat farms. What's a goat farm look like? We give them 3 nanny goats. I know that doesn't sound like a lot, but in Nepal, you get nanny goats. Billy goats are easy to find. They're always wandering around. Okay, so we get the nannies because the nannies have kids. They keep all the females. They raise the males and sell them off. And during festival season, they bring them down into the city. They could sell a full-grown goat for $85 each. So if a family's living on, between $30 to $50 a month, that's a good income. So about 18 months, they're able to fully support their families. So, and this guy now, he loves Jesus. He's an elder in one of the churches. Here he is helping feed people during the pandemic. So just wanted to share a little bit about, is there testimonies? Yes. There's a witch doctor who came to the Lord through somebody running a pipe in front of his house. So they speak Nepalese, as well as these people also speak Chipang. Nepalese is the national language of Nepal, Nepali, also known as it. I'll give you a word. In America, a lot of people, they know the word namaste, where people sometimes practice yoga. But in the Christian world, they do not use the word namaste to say hello to another Christian, because that term actually means I salute the God in you. It's a Hindu term for within meditation. So they say the word Jai Masih. Say Jai Masih. It basically, if you want to break it down, means he's coming soon, or Maranatha. For you got old Christians might remember the term Maranatha. Okay, young Christians, what's Maranatha? I don't know. But old. I mean, I've been blessed. I've been a Christian since I've been 6. I'm 50. I'm 59. So I could be one of those old Christians. But this is a typical pastors network where we have. That's one of the shirts that we gave out for the different teams. If you look at the picture right underneath Mandai, who has that shirt on, that's our pastors network. So those are all the different pastors or wives or leaders. We do training 2 times a year where we basically rustle up all the Chipang pastors within our network. And we do training for 3 days at a time. And we'll do 3 sets of training. So there's right now within churches and people, church pastors and leadership that are not officially part, but they're associates of ours. We have about 300. We started with that girl with the potato chip bags on her feet when there was about 20 churches among the Chipang. Now there's about 300. So God's just doing some amazing things that way. You're talking about water baptisms. There you go, Pastor. Right in the middle of a waterfall, you can do your baptisms there in Nepal. That's so we have things like that's a group of Christians helping to build a water system. That's why they're carrying all that stuff across. Down in the bottom underneath them, that whole group of people just got water baptized. In Nepal, water baptism is really significant because that declares yourself to be a Christian. It's nice to say I'm a Christian, but when they water baptize themselves, get water baptized, that really makes a statement to everybody. I'm a follower of Jesus. So some other things the churches do, like over on the right-hand side, that picture of all the kids with the coats on. You know, one thing about the Chipang, they can't afford to buy coats. They can't afford to buy winter clothes. So in the wintertime, we usually help buy them, get them coats and jackets and, you know, or if a family has a disaster like down, you see the one lady and her son, their house caught on fire and burned to the ground. So we'll help rebuild a home for them. And we don't rebuild the same type of bamboo homes. We actually build a kind of a cement block home with a metal roof. So, and so give you a little bit like what's a Chipang church service for the worship time is. This is just a stone on stone with mud. So this is just a simple mud church with a mud floor. And they roll out some mats on it so people could sit on it. So people ask, well, how do they keep a mud floor clean? Well, you wet it down and you sweep it again. So that's how they they apply fresh mud. But I mean, these people just love Jesus, you know, and this church is healthy. It's God's doing some good things. One of the things that we do twice a year as well, we do medical clinics. I don't know if anybody likes to go fishing, but how do you, if you're going fishing, you always want to have the biggest, best, either big old minnow or a big old night crawler to catch stuff. So we bring medical clinics in. We're allowed to do them in the churches. So we put it out to the neighborhood. We'll have 150 people come a day to the clinics. And as they're at the clinics, they see doctors, nurses. We also provide a prayer station. So everybody who comes through the door, they're offered opportunity to be prayed for. And we have very often have everybody say, well, please pray for us. We get to pray for everybody. And we also have a pharmacy. And when people ask, well, what's the use of having a pharmacy if you only give people a month's supply and you leave? Well, what we do is every church that we do a clinic in, we also set them up with a medical box. So if we see people in the village who have certain things, like for example, somebody might be a diabetic and they take metformin. So we'll have a year's supply of metformin for that village for everybody who needs it. So they come once a month and the pastor becomes the pharmacist. Here's your stack of metformin, or here's your stack of this, or here's your different things you need. So when the church has a pharmacy, so they come once a month to church, they get their medicine. That's non-Christians as well as Christians. So we don't draw the line, but it gives an opportunity for people to come to church. So, and these pictures here show installing a water system. Okay, as you guys, we just talked about the water system a little bit. Some of the nuts and bolts of it. We go up in a mountain top, and we generally find out what's a mountain spring. There's a lot of springs in the hills and mountains of Nepal. So we go find a clean drinking spring, and we build a little reservoir around it. We put what's called a sand filter that's attached to. What's a sand filter? As water comes in one way, it goes through big rocks to little rocks through sand and out. And that actually basically gets rid of about 95% of the bacteria out of that water. How does it work? On the top layer of the water, it develops a scum layer. And that scum layer is the stuff that eats all the bad stuff coming through. So as it gets filtered through, we've brought our water back and got it tested in different places, and it's just spring water. That's how it comes across. And so we want to get rid of the bacteria. That's the main thing. And the heavy things like mica and different things that are in the water. So, because again, we're up in the mountains where there is granite, mica, and all those things. So as they're building, so again, wow, we're upgraded some of our water tanks by, this is a water tank being built up in the left-hand corner. Again, where they're concrete. As you look over on the right-hand side in the middle, you can see like a little metal door. When we first started doing it, we were just putting a corrugated sheeting across the top. But we found out that kids and goats would like to go swimming in the tanks. So we ended up cementing the tops, and we actually have two blacksmiths who work with us, and they make these different lids to put on. So we're able to lock them down. You can see where down like in the bottom middle, there's a sign on top of a water cap. So your particular water system that your church invested in, it will have 10 different water taps. we try to give one water tap for 10 families. So this village, we're taking care of a lot of families. And so that particular sign's embedded in every one of the taps. Okay, so we don't run water into people's homes. We have it as a common place to come and get water. What really got us into water was that first village with the girl with the bag, potato chip bags. We found out that everybody in that village had to walk basically 2.5 kilometers down a mountainside to a river, get water in containers, then have to carry it right back up the mountain to their homes. And in Nepal, the men don't carry water. It's women's work. So we wanted to help the women of the village as much as the families, because a lot of the women come to the clinics. Their biggest problem is they got pains in their backs, pains, and the women work harder than the men. Okay, that's not saying anything bad about men, but and I think we'll have this is another. This is a high-speed water. About 2 weeks to put a water system in. So it isn't like they're there for 6 months working on a hillside. We actually, part of the work of Cutting Edge Relief, we have a construction company. So we employ 8 construction workers and a cook. So there's a lady that goes with them and helps do the cooking. And we have 8 Christian believers who help with the construction. So they're very good at what they do. They know how to put the systems in. They know how to build the buildings. They're efficient. They're not like some contractors. Whoops, let me go to the next one here. They're not like some of the contractors that we have in the States who take 6 months to build a shed. We built a church for 150 people in 3 weeks. That was from level in the ground to putting it all in. One thing we do too, it's great to bring people water, but if people are starving and they don't have any income, so what we do to help churches is at every church that we partner with, we give them a bee farm. So what does that mean? 12 to 15 hives, given the church with bees in it. They're able to harvest twice a year the honey, and they sell the honey off, and that's how they support the pastor in the church. So that becomes basically the church's bee farm, and they become self-sufficient. One of the things in my world of missions, I don't want to walk into villages and people instantly put their hand out saying, "What are you going to give me?" I said, "Hey, we'll help you become self-sufficient." So, we might put the hand out here and say, "Hey, we're working on stuff," but all that goes into helping churches in Nepal become self-sufficient. And that we were talking about the goats. Again, here we are, some families getting goats, and we've helped about 400 families with goats. Goats are great because they don't take a lot of work. Nepal, they just wander off through the hills. The kids feed them. Mm-hmm. They come in, they have kids. Again, 18 months, that family self-sufficient with raising enough goats, having goats, selling goats back and forth. They need to protect their goats too, because we had a lady I met that we had helped her with a goat farm, and a fox got in and killed some of the kids. We don't think about foxes, but in Nepal where we work, there's leopards, there's foxes, there's tigers, but not up in this area. But that's stuff we have to maintain. We also do chicken farms. I actually like chicken farms because they're a pretty good way of making a family self-sufficient. For $300, we build a chicken coop and get them all the things they need to feed the chickens and help the chickens, and 100 peeps. So a peep's $1 a piece. So we get 100 peeps, give them 100 peeps. They raise the peep from $1 size to a $7 roaster. You go to Sam's, they got that $5 chicken, same type of thing. So they're able to take $1 peep and flip it into a $7 chicken. And what that allows them to do is buy another peep, buy more grain to feed the next batch of chickens, and they work their way out of poverty. They don't eat eggs. They do the roasters. Nepalis in this area, they don't raise egg layers. There's so much more money in the raising the roasters. And they could go buy eggs if they want, but they just buy peeps. They have actually, you could buy a box of peeps and you see them carrying them up the mountainside. So, the other thing that we help do, a lot of times we do this for a community, and that church basically is the owner of the device. These are grain mills. A lot of the people in the village, even though they raise corn, they like to grind it and they like make corn mush and different things. Before, they would have to carry the corn down into the city, a 2 to 3 day walk, get it ground, pay the person who ground it, then had to carry it back up. Now we're able to, in most of the villages that we have churches, we bought them grain mills. So about $450, we were able to give them either a battery operated with electric supply or a generator one. So that's what these they grind their own grain. And if something would break on one, we're able to buy the parts in Nepal and get them fixed. So like this fall, we had to help with repair a couple grain mills. One, we had a motor burn up on it, and another one, it just had some problems with the feed mechanism. All that stuff could be bought in Kathmandu easily. Kathmandu, again, is the capital of Nepal. We do other things too, which sounds kind of funny. We help do village markets. We've been approached by different people. Can you help us set up a market in our village? This will be a way for our village to come out of poverty, and somebody will oversee that particular market. Like, for example, they're building the market here. We build it from the ground up. So we don't buy pre-existing buildings. We get land, we build our own. So what happens if you take somebody else's building over? You generally get an old bamboo building that has a mud walls and it just falls apart. If we build it, we're able to put it together in a pretty efficient way. I know some people look in there in the bottom picture and say, hey, what are they doing with all that soft drinks in there? Well, I'll give you an idea. What does a Nepali birthday party look like for who are Christians? So if you have a birthday for your kid, you go down to the local market and you buy a big old 3-liter bottle of Coke or Mountain Dew. That's their favorite thing, is Mountain Dew, believe it or not. Even in Nepal, they drink Mountain Dew. So they get these little shot glass size disposable cups, and everybody gets a little shot of Mountain Dew. That's how you celebrate your birthday. So, okay. It's a different culture. Other things we help do, especially for women who have maybe they're widowed or orphaned. These two girls over on the far side, they actually were orphaned. So their whole family was orphaned. There were 6 kids. They had one daughter had gone to trade school to learn how to be a seamstress. But she didn't have the money to buy a sewing machine. She didn't have the money to do things. So we helped her set up a sewing shop. So now she's able to help her family stay out of debt, stay out of poverty. One of the big problems with the Chipang is that the non-Christian ones, if they run out of money, they sell a kid. They've been known to sell a lot of their kids into prostitution and into India and things like that. So helping people become self-sufficient, they don't do bad things to their kids, What's that? Yeah. No, they're selling their actual children. So their children, not their kids. They sell those kids. Goat kids are okay to sell. But another business that we've set up is a flip-flop business. I know that you guys wear flip-flops at the beach, but that's one of their main shoes is a flip-flop. So we could make a pair of flip-flops for about $1 a pair. They sell them for $3 to $4 in the village. So we have a business that makes flip-flops. So when we do a medical clinic or a pastor's training, we end up bringing 100 pair of flip-flops for each location we're at. Like we just did 5 clinics, so we brought 500 flip-flop pairs, and we're able to give them to different people in different villages. So I know it's a different type of thing, having a flip-flop business. One of the things the Lord has kind of moved us into is helping with orphan and abandoned kids up in the villages. So we do have a kids home. Okay, it's called the Hope and a Future Children's Home. We have 10 kids in it now. We're getting ready to build a new home that'll be having room for 25 children. Okay, our partner, his name's Mandai. He's in Nepali. I've worked with him since the earthquake back in 2015. We've been partners on all these projects, and he has a vision to build a bigger home. And so here are some of the kids here who are at the home. They go to a Christian school in Kathmandu. There is old mission schools. They go to a Christian school. They came out of the Chipang villages. They couldn't speak Nepali. They couldn't read. They couldn't do anything. Within 1.5 years of them being in school, they're like getting straight A's. They're just really gifted kids, and they were forgotten about up in the mountains. They were kind of the throwaway people. Okay, so those are some of the kids from our home. You thought people ask, well, what about kids who are older? Here are 3 Chipang young adults. The one man in the black T-shirt, he's actually right now in a Bible college in India. He'll go to school for 3 years. He'll get a degree in Bible, a real college degree, and he'll come back and he's going to help set up a Bible school among the Chipang people. The boy in the middle, he's getting ready to go to Bible school in India. The young lady in the blue dress, she's getting ready to go to become a nurse. Okay, that's just from the Chipang, as well as we have other girls that work with us. One girl in the white and one girl in the black jackets, they serve as translators, but they're also in college right now. They're in their second year of, one's in nursing school, one's in medical assistant school. So we do clinics. We also want to raise up the next generation of medical people. So, and that's 3 girls in front of me. They serve as translators, but one wants to be a doctor and 2 nurses. So we help send them to college. What does it mean to send somebody to college for a year in Nepal? It's about $600 to go to become a nurse a year. So $600 each. So you get to go to 2 to 3 years for college, and that's how they come out. They come out as an RN, so, or as a medical assistant. Yeah, they learn and they want to do that. What's nice about that, they could get regular jobs and work and then go out with us when we do the medical teams up in the mountains. So we have our own built-in medical team. So I don't know if you know, but it's sometimes hard to get doctors to go on a short-term missions trip and nurses. So yeah, we want to make it also, because with Nepal, we never know when the door will shut. And the door was shut for about 20 years to do work back in the 90s to 2000, and now it's open. So as it's open, what happened last year, the government changed the way visas are done in the country of Nepal. I used to be able to go for 90 days at a time and have to leave for 1 month and come back. Now you can only stay in the country for 90 days total. That's all I can be in Nepal any year is 90 days. So that's why we're working with our partners, raising up the Nepalis to do the work. I'm not braggadocious, but I'm the president of Cutting Edge Relief. Part of my job is to raise up short-term teams, raise funds, and, take care of the folks there. People say, well, if you're only there 90 days, what do you do the rest of your time? Yeah, we work with developing Cutting Edge, but we also, we do local ministry in Pittsburgh. Like the churches, part of Cutting Edge's original was helping with disaster relief. And because we have people helping with disaster relief, they would come home from trips and say, hey, how can we be involved in our community? So we would do construction projects at homes, help widows and different things. We do community outreaches and different things like that. We might go help a widow work on her home. We do things like for backpack distribution. Last summer, we gave away 250 backpacks in the poorest community in Western Pennsylvania. Their poverty rate's 39% in a town called Arnold. So we work in that small town. We do feeding programs throughout the week, lunch programs, And so that's one of the things we do. We also do outreaches and different things. We have church, we'll take the church out of the church and we take it down and put it in a community park. And we'll have church in the city. So, and people always ask, well, what's your family look like? Well, this is my family. Okay. So, and that's my wife in the white up in the top. That's we have actually two adult sons. One's a teacher and one's a paramedic. And our daughter is an African looking girl. She's from Ethiopia. We adopted her. She's in nursing school right now. She's gonna be working with me in Nepal in the future. And we have three little Chinese boys. Two of them we adopted, and one's more of a kindred care that lives with us. So we have from 10 to 30 in our family. So that's a little bit about who we are and what we do. So just wanted to share that with you and leave the rest of the time up for anybody has any questions. I know I blasted you guys with a bunch of stuff, any. Yeah. Yeah. My heart has always been, I don't want, there's a term, I don't know if anybody's ever heard of a lady named Jackie Pullinger. If I ever heard her. She was a missionary in Hong Kong. She worked in the wall city with the triads, and she came up with a term called rice Christians. They only showed up to church to get a bag of rice. So I don't want people just showing up to get a bag of rice. We'll teach you guys how to raise your own rice, how to do your own things. So we want to get them out of poverty. These people are forgotten folks. They were kind of, government threw them away. They didn't have a vote. Nobody cared about them. Now the government's caring about them because they're starting to have businesses. They're starting to prosper. Last year we were presented with a certificate from a government official saying that you are welcomed in our villages. You're allowed to do what you want. We'll protect you and take care of you while you're here. Other people got booted out. We got a letter saying, come on in, because other missionaries were there for a lot of years, and visa laws changed. They weren't able to stay. And if you were going to stay with a business visa, a lot of people used to stay on business visas. Now that business visa is $85,000 a year, plus you have to pay that much in taxes and prove that you had that much income. So it's really priced typical missionaries out. You could still go be a teacher or a student in Nepal and universities, but the typical traditional looking missionaries are not there anymore. You could be a doctor in a public hospital, but even the big Christian hospital, the government took over. So there's a lot of crackdown on Christians in Nepal. They get a lot of their pressure from India. I don't know if anybody follows politics in India, but there's a current prime minister. His name is Modi. Modi's a very pro-Hindu person. He's actually perhaps to persecute the churches in India. So he puts pressure on the country of Nepal to get Nepal to be back to being a Hindu country. It's not a Hindu country anymore. It's a secular country. So, and he doesn't want Christians. He doesn't want, all that stuff. So that's a little of who we are and what we do. And again, just wanted to say thank you for putting money out towards helping with the water system. So. Mandai. His name is MAN space DAI. Mandai. Mm-hmm. Oh, we just finished a church. It's called the Chicken Coop Church. And actually there's one picture back in the church. It's a church for 150 people. This church had an interesting how it was started. A husband and wife who were in ministry came together to leadership training. At the end of the training, we asked the question, does anybody have a vision the Lord's putting on their heart to do? Could we come pray for you? We had this husband and wife come up, and they say the Lord's put on our heart to start a market in a Tibetan Buddhist village that are not Chipang people. And we want to start a market and plant a church through it. It's like, okay, we'll help you get a market going and we'll see what the Lord does. Well, within a year, they had a church in the back of their little market that was made out of a chicken coop. They were raising chickens. They needed space to grow the church. They cleaned out the chicken coop. They put 75 people in a chicken coop. That's how they had church. And as that grew, we were approached, can you help us with a church for 150 people? So within 2.5 years, they grew a church from 0 to 150 people. I was just able to go over the end of October to do the dedication of that building. So right now there's a church for 150 people that grew out of a chicken coop. So, you know, we built a church for 150 people for less than $10,000. So, you know, America's a,
Yeah.
yes.
So many different things.
Yeah, so everything's very visible. You can see it happening live, you know. So how does that work with funding and things? So Mandai is working in the villages with the Chipang Pastors Network that we have. And they'll come up and say, hey, this family really needs a lot of help. They they want to set up a chicken coop farm. So we pray with them about it. Mandai submits a proposal to me. So I know what it's going to cost for the chicken coop or for the church or for the water system. Work on raising money for it. We send the money over to Nepal and they build it, you know, and it doesn't take long periods of time. It's done very quickly. So yeah, like for example, in January, I took over a whole two suitcases of battery operated hand tools. So they're up in the village now with we've also took over solar panels, and I don't know if anybody knows, they're called solar generators. They're like a box that you can run solar panels in and it'll create a big power supply. We're able to charge up the battery operated tools off the power generator, and they're running power saws or grinders, all those things. You know, so we're able to get the technology up in the mountains that help them. So, you know, before, if you were going to cut a board, you used to get the hand saw out and you were, and they were cutting planks that way. You know, could you imagine 8-foot planks, you know, hand sawing them across? So, and a lot of you saw working with a rebar and some of the metal work. We have a grinder. They get a grinder with a metal blade and they just cut through the metal work and they do all the hand work. We also have a welding machine. You know, it sounds kind of crazy. What are you doing with a welding machine up in a village? Some places we also bought a generator. So we have a regular generator. So they have a little box about this big, which is their welding machine. The guys are welding stuff up in the villages and building the framework, metal work, and all those things that are needed. We use gasoline generator. Gasoline's expensive. So we only run the generator when they have to. So a lot of times up in the villages, everything's flashlights at night, you know, that's kind of how it works. When we bring a team up in the village, like a medical team, if we're staying in a village overnight, we sleep in the church. So we put out foam pads all over it and women on one side, men on the other side. And, you know, we'll have a whole team just sleeping on the floor of a church. We shut the doors and go in your sleeping bags and you sleep the night on the church floor. Okay. And some of them are dirt floors. So, I mean, we put a pad on top so you're not exactly breathing in dirt, but, you know, it's always come home for about 3 weeks after every trip to Nepal and you're still cleaning stuff out of your lungs. It's just, that's kind of a little bit of the cost of doing ministry, but that's okay. The other thing I mentioned about blacksmith shops, like some of this, we have a couple blacksmiths that we use and they make things like sickles for cutting rice. Okay. I don't know if anybody ever follows knives or likes knives. This is called a kukri knife. You can look them up on YouTube. They're the national knife of Nepal. This is a little bit smaller than the military version, but that's a regular size kukri. I got some bigger ones in here. So, you know, we have blacksmiths who make these who are part of our team. So like there's another little bit bigger one. So that's some of the things they make. We do have a catalog too, if anybody was interested in all the different things that we do. So that's available. They got mailed out too. So if you're on our mailing list, that just came out. And what these have in it, all our different projects. I mean, I'm not always mooching money, but inside, if you wanted to pray for something like chicken farms or pastors networks or things, that's all in these as well. And we do put a newsletter out, but I think you guys post it here at the church anyways. So, because you guys do support us at a ministry as well. Questions?
You ever have people, when you're helping these people out of poverty and all of a sudden now they have chickens and do you ever have other people trying to steal from them or gangs?
Not in these villages, they don't steal. But we do encourage them as they start to become prosperous, they start tithing. So that's one of the things that we really encourage, that they start tithing and giving back. You know, it's nice to get rich, but if you're not paying your tithes, giving back, we need to, our whole heart is to help them become self-sufficient. Yes, any other questions?
And you only get to spend 90 days per year in Nepal now?
Yeah.
How do you divide that up?
I go every quarter to Nepal. So usually go for 2 to 3 weeks every quarter. And so, I mean, the world has changed so much. You got a guy who does networking, and the world of the internet has changed everything too. I mean, I could talk through Facebook Messenger with Mandai every day. It costs nothing. That's how we communicate. We grew up in the villages. Believe it or not, up in even remote villages, you'll find people with little solar chargers connected to their phone, charging their phone. Like for this solar charger's connected up to an old style MP3 player. But this MP3 player, we have the Bible on it in Nepali. So if somebody's blind in a village, we give them a headset and the player and a solar panel, and they're able to listen to the Bible, because they can't read. So that's one of the things we do too, is we run into people who are blind. We give them a solar panel and the Bible that way. We also produce, missionaries always have bags of tricks, so. Like, for example, this is the this will be like a 3-day training course. And every pastor will get a copy of this. This is in Nepali. So it actually goes through all the notes are in here. One thing we've learned about a lot of Nepali pastors, most of them have never had formal training. Most of them maybe went to 2 or 3 weeks of Bible training somewhere. You're a pastor now, you can read. You have a Bible. Okay, that makes them a pastor. So what we do is we do our leadership training, we buy study Bibles in Nepali for them. These are like real study Bibles with concordances and all the different helps. So we teach, that's our first half a day of leadership training, is we teach you how to use a Bible. I mean, most of these guys maybe had 2 or 3 books, maybe a New Testament. That's all they've ever had experience. We walk into one of the things and say, who was Solomon? Who's Solomon? Who was Samson? What's a Samson? They don't know anything that way. So we work on helping to develop, their Bible knowledge, as well as, as we do training on spiritual warfare or prayer or different things that way, it helps them develop themselves so they're able to teach. And what's nice with all these materials, everything's in it. Because we've realized that most Nepalis, even pastors, they might know how to read, but their writing's really horrible. So they'll never be able to keep up with the notes. So all the notes are already printed up for them. I don't know if you've ever had somebody teach a Bible class and they want to give you 10 points and you only catch 7 of them. So it's when I was in Bible college, it was like, I had one Bible teacher. Yeah, here's 10 points. He would look at everybody at the end of the class and say, what were those 10 points? He gave me 4, so we wanted to make sure people had everything they needed. And we'll keep you up to date with the water system. So, and when they're all done, I'll bring one of these back for the church. Like this is one of the metal plaques. I'll give that to you. Okay, Jack. So this is one of the metal plaques. This was done by a ministry in the Pittsburgh area. So they make they're stainless steel things that they laser etch. I know it sounds crazy in Nepal, they're laser etching, but and technology comes in from India and China. So that's some of the things they'll be able to have that way. So questions? Sure, anything.
So did you have to learn the language at all?
Yeah, I know. I learned Nepali not officially in school. I learned it. I went there when I was 21, and I was only with Nepali people. So my first 3 years there, and what we did at those back in the um 80s was we did literature distribution. We did all the mountain trails. So yeah, everybody knows Everest is there. So I did everything from Everest West. Every trail went from village to village, passing out gospel literature. So I learned Nepali mostly conversational. I could get around, I could do whatever's needed. But preach, I still preach with a translator. You know, I didn't officially go to language school because I don't have time for that. We got to work, you know. There are people who go on the intellectual trail, and I go on the practical trail more. So Nepal's one of those countries where it's kind of unique because the stability is not always there. Any other questions?
What about pressure from the Hindus and the Muslims?
I have never had, I mean, I've been in riots in India and things like that, but in Nepal, we've never really had any problems because we come in doing a medical clinic in a village. We're only coming in to help people, you know, and we pray and we ask the Lord's blessing on the teams and things. So we've been blessed to this point, you know.
Not just Christian.
No, we work with Christians, Hindus, Buddhists, anybody there. I mean, if a witch doctor came in, we could help them. Yeah, I mean, we work with, I mean, there's a couple former witch doctors and stuff who are Christian leaders now.
Do any people get saved because of the witch doctors, you know, from having known them as witch doctors?
They get their testimony. So of course, they'll see, this is what, like that one witch doctor, his whole family became Christians. You know, and his extended family became Christians. So you end up with a village full of Christians out of one witch doctor.
You see such a
Yeah,
transformed
because
life.
they see the transformation. And God's been doing great stuff, and that's part of why we're there. You know? I mean, I was blessed as a young guy. I went out, I graduated high school, went to Bible school, then I ended up in Nepal. And that's where my goal in life was to go die on the hills in Nepal preaching the gospel. Well, the government of Nepal had a different idea. Okay, so, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, back in those days, everybody ended up in jail. Instead of, I could have went back to America. I went to Hong Kong and China. So I was working in Hong Kong, taking Bibles into China. So we just got out of one pot and hopped in another pot. Wycliffe, I was there with them for 8 years. Yeah, that's how we got introduced. And that's when I transitioned back, when the Nepal was opening up during, right, actually, literally as I left Wycliffe and Wycliffe, 1 month later, they had the earthquake in Nepal, and I was right back in Nepal. So it was like really weird timing that, you know, okay, Nepal opened back up. I'm over there with the teams doing stuff. So yeah, it's like God had a timing. Did I enjoy doing banquets? Yeah. Did I eat 400 nights of chicken? Yeah. We had 400 banquets. My wife and I hosted. So. Lots of chicken. So.
Better than bat, right?
You know, my favorite testimony about bats is, you know, they brought me the bat first. I got to pick the first piece of meat. Then they gave it around people. We were sitting around a fire at night in the dark. So you're not sure what you're actually grabbing. And one of my friends is a nurse. She grabbed a piece of meat, and as she was chomping on it, something poked her in the lip. And it ended up being the claw of the bat. They're big fruit bats, you know, so.
Oh, my God.
You know.
So when they ask you about the banquets, you just say, hey, it tastes like that.
Yeah, you know, we got rubber chicken or you got juicy bat, you know.
Anyone else? Question?
Yeah, it's wonderful.
Yeah, God's allowed us to we have our fingers in a lot of, yeah, because different people are good at things. Some people were good at raising goats. Some people are good at raising chickens. Some are good at raising bees. On the farming side, also, we talked about them just growing corn. Since we're bringing water systems into the village, they're having a lot of surplus water. So now we've taught them how to put drip irrigation in. So they're able to grow vegetables other than, now they're growing tomatoes, peppers, you know, things like that can help with their diets, peas, beans. because they didn't have ability to do that. We're getting ready in the spring to do hoop gardens. I know, and if you guys have seen hoop gardens, so we're doing hoop gardens in that area so they could grow tomatoes more efficiently because they have a lot of vine tomatoes and they grow them that way. So they do it like American Indians used to do. You know, you get beans, corn stalk, and things would grow up around the corn stalk. They do that similar type of planting. And they get 2 seasons a year. So it isn't like here we're stuck with 1 season. They have 2 growing seasons because they're semi-tropical where we're at. And we're not up in the extreme mountains where the Chipang are. They're in what's called the middle hills of Nepal, which means you go a little bit down from their hills, that takes you right into the plain that goes into India. And that's where they have everything from tigers, elephants, rhinos, and game. They have game preserves that at the bottom of the Chipang area. So we're up in the hills above it. And no, Westerners don't go in this area. They go on trekking routes in this area, a bunch of poor people in the hills, you know, other than people who go to West Virginia, you know, so. But you're not in that part of Appalachia, you know, you're on this side, you know.
It's funny.
I mean, New Brunswick is so much different than down here, you know.
Could you say something in Nepali just so
Yeah,
we can see
I can
what
say,
it means?
I'll teach you some words. Namaste is the greeting. Jai Masi, he's coming soon. Okay, we learned that. If you wanted, we'll talk water. Water is an easy way to learn some words. Pani is water. Think of a pond, pani, pani. Okay, if you have hot water, it's tato pani. Tato's hot. Tato pani. So if you wanted to have cold water, it's chiso pani. It's cold. Okay, chiso pani. It isn't like Chinese where you have to have tonal. This is very much, you know, just a regular verbal type language.
And the
so yeah.
adjective comes in front of the name.
Yeah, there's a place called Gorkapani. Gorkapani means horse water.
Oh,
Okay, reason why they called it horse water is that's where they used to bring the salt trains down from Tibet through Nepal to India, and they used to water their horses at this one town. So it was called horse water. You know, that's just simple words like water. If you're doing vegetables, you know, you can learn like aloo is a potato. You know, you can learn kali, which is an easy one to remember because that's cauliflower. So kali, some of the words they did not have before English came. Like if you were going to go take a taxi, it's taxi. You know, a bus is a bussy. You know, so they had to bring in words that did not exist. You know, English is great because we just steal any word we want, stick it in. So, you know, Nepali, it didn't exist. You know, they didn't have any motorized things. You know, you have to, oh, there's a car. Okay, how do we do car? How do we do this? So, and so many people in Nepal are learning English now too. Probably about 1/3 of the Generation Xers. They live and work outside of Nepal. They work throughout the Middle East. So many Nepalis are poor. They send their kids off to work in Middle Eastern countries, like in the Emirates or Qatar or, you know, Saudi Arabia. They work doing manual jobs, build construction, you know, those type of things. And they send money back home. So the whole atmosphere of Nepal is changing too, because their kids are working overseas. They're sending money back. Mom and dad are now building a house that they never had a house. They lived in a shack. Now they have a 3-story house. It's like, why do you have a 3-story house? Oh, my son's sending money back. But the problem is you know, you're losing 1/3 of your young people coming up. And as Jack knows, about 2 months ago, they had a major civil war in Nepal. It lasted 1 week. In 1 week, it's called the Generation Z Rebellion. Generation Z Rebellion. In 1 week, they overthrew the whole government and installed a new one. They burnt down the parliament. They'll be like going to Washington DC and burning down the Congress, burning down the White House. Then next week you do an online vote and you select the next prime minister. They did an online vote. We can't even count paper.
yeah.
Kill people, you know? But the generation, you know, Z generation, they're very technical. They love the internet. What's really started the revolution was the government turned off social media. And when social media was turned off, Generation Z arose and said, turn it on or we're going to burn you down. They did. They burned them down. They turned it on, you know. So I'm not saying let's have a revolution, but, you know, in Nepal, you know, they had a revolution. Countries like Myanmar and down in through Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka had I don't know if you guys followed, they just had a civil war. They had one in Bangladesh, a civil war. All these things are kind of modeled off of that same model of overthrowing the government quickly, putting a new government in without having you know, how many civil wars have happened in the past where countries fought for years inside? You know, they're just flipping the government. Hey, we don't need to kill our neighbors. Let's just get rid of these people in charge. So that's how. So please keep me and my family in your prayers and Mandai and our team. You know, if you wanted to, up here I have this is a 2 rupee coin, and the Nepali money is called rupees. They got a 1 rupee. They have a lot of different paper money, but this is 2 rupees. People always ask, well, what is it worth? There's 142 rupees to $1. Okay,
Oh, wow.
so it's not worth a ton of money.
Oh,
We just got rid of our head change.
yeah,
No, I mean.
yeah,
Yeah, so they really don't. I mean, I have a bank, a money changer friend. I know money changers, but you know, every time I see him, he always gives me a handful of rupee coins. You know, hey, take these back here, give them away. So, but thank you again for supporting us and praying for us. And anyway, oh, sure. Grandfather, I just want to thank you so much for this evening, Lord. Father, I just ask you to bless this church, Lord, bless the people here. Father, I just ask that they continue to serve you in this community, that you would just open doors for young people to come here, that they would continue to grow and be a faithful church, Lord. Father, I ask you just bless them as they go out tonight and bless them for this rest of this week. In Jesus' name, amen. Amen. You're welcome. Yeah, if you guys are interested in any of this stuff, you're more than welcome. Take a rupee. We have some cutting edge pens if you want to